The sleek crystalline spacecraft of the Galactic Confederation descended through Earth's atmosphere, trailing iridescent light that dazzled onlookers gathered in New Beijing's Grand Plaza. It was May 15th, 2157, a date that would forever mark humanity's official entry into the interstellar community. After decades of covert observation, the aliens had finally decided humans were ready for contact. Ambassador Tay stood at the viewport, his silver-blue skin reflecting the approaching cityscape. Unlike the other 5 members of the delegation, Tay had advocated for Earth's inclusion in the Confederation. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he adjusted his translation device and straightened his ceremonial sash. "Remember," he told his delegation, "these humans have achieved remarkable progress despite their short evolutionary timeline. They deserve our respect." Admiral Kyo, the military representative, flicked her sensory tendrils dismissively. "They've barely mastered basic antimatter containment. Their ships can't even reach the nearest star system without generation travel. Yet they survived their atomic age without extinction," Tay countered. "Few species manage that." The ship settled onto the landing pad with barely a whisper. Outside, the United Earth Council waited. 12 representatives from Earth's unified government, flanked by an honor guard in dress uniforms. Among them stood Major Jin, a decorated officer chosen for her exceptional service record. At 35, she represented the best of Earth's defense forces. The weight of her great-grandfather's M1911 pistol hung in its holster at her hip. A special exemption granted for this historic meeting. The antique had been carried through the Korean Unification War, then the Third World War, and finally, the Mars Colony Rebellion. Jin considered it her lucky charm. As the alien delegation emerged from their craft, humans got their first official look at the diverse species that made up the Confederation. Ambassador Tay led with his humanoid form, followed by the insectoid Admiral Kyo, then representatives that resembled everything from floating jellyfish to what appeared to be walking tree trunks. Council President Hoon stepped forward. "On behalf of humanity, we welcome you to Earth." The formal greetings proceeded according to protocol until they reached the security arrangements. Admiral Kyo's translator produced a harsh clicking sound as she noticed Jin's sidearm. "You bring weapons to a peace meeting?" she asked, compound eyes flashing with color that the human's translators interpreted as amusement. Jin stood tall. "It's ceremonial, Admiral. A family heirloom and part of our military tradition." Ambassador Tay approached, curious. "May I see this tradition?" Jin hesitated, then carefully removed the pistol, ejected the magazine, cleared the chamber, and presented it grip first to the ambassador. Tay took it, surprised by its weight. "Metal and chemical propellant?" he asked, turning it over in his 4-fingered hands. "Yes, sir, it's called an M1911. It's been in my family for over 150 years. The delegation's technology specialist, a being named Bok, who resembled a small, grey robot, scanned the weapon. Primitive kinetic energy device, uses controlled explosion to propel metal projectiles, highly inefficient, dangerous to the user." A ripple of translator-mediated laughter passed through the alien delegation. Even Ambassador Tay's mouth parts twitched in what humans would later learn was their equivalent of a smile. "We abandoned such weapons 8 centuries ago," Admiral Kyo said, not bothering to hide her disdain. "Our lowest security drones have particle beams that could vaporize this entire plaza." Jin accepted her pistol back, her face calm despite the flush creeping up her neck. She holstered it with practiced precision. "Sometimes the old ways have value the new cannot appreciate." "Admiral," she said quietly. President Hoon quickly steered the conversation to diplomatic matters, and the delegation moved toward the council building, a towering structure of glass and living plant material that represented Earth's commitment to blending technology with nature. As they walked, Jin found herself beside Ambassador Tay. "Your Admiral seems unimpressed with our technology," she said. Tay's translation device hummed. "Kyo comes from a warrior culture. They respect only what they fear." "And they don't fear us," Jin observed. "Should they?" Tay asked, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. Jin watched a maintenance robot scuttle past, its AI far less sophisticated than the seemingly sentient machines the aliens had brought. History teaches us that underestimating an opponent is dangerous, Ambassador. In the Council chamber, holographic displays showcased Earth's achievements, the atmospheric cleansing after the climate crisis, the lunar colonies, the Martian terraforming project, the asteroid mining operations. The aliens nodded politely but seemed unimpressed. During a break in the proceedings, Jin overheard Admiral Kyo speaking to her security team. Their defensive systems are laughable, energy shields barely strong enough to deflect space debris. Weapons that rely on explosive chemicals, ships that use reaction mass. It's like watching children play with toys. Jin felt her jaw tighten but maintained her professional demeanor. Later at the formal reception, she stood watch as humans and aliens attempted cultural exchange over food and drink. Ambassador Tay approached her again, seeming genuinely interested in human ways. Your weapon. It requires significant skill. To use effectively, yes? It does, Jin replied. I've trained with it since I was a teenager. My great-grandfather taught my grandmother, who taught my mother, who taught me. Fascinating. In the Confederation, we program combat skills directly into neural interfaces. Training, as you describe it, is considered inefficient. Jin smiled slightly. There's value in the journey, Ambassador. The process builds more than just skill. It builds character. Tay considered this. An interesting perspective. Perhaps there is wisdom in your primitive ways that we have forgotten in our rush toward advancement. As the reception continued, Jin couldn't help but notice how the aliens kept glancing at her sidearm and smirking among themselves. They clearly saw humans as technological infants, barely worth including in their grand confederation. Little did they know that in just 3 months, Jin's primitive weapon would save not only human lives but the lives of their precious delegation as well. Sometimes, she thought, the oldest solution is the best one, especially when your enemy has prepared only for the new. 3 months after first contact, the massive Confederation flagship Stellar Harmony hung in Earth's orbit like a second moon. The kilometer-long vessel resembled a glittering blue dragonfly, its 4 wings actually vast solar collectors that captured energy from the sun. Today, its grand exhibition hall hosted the first interspecies technology exchange, an event bringing together achievements from 27 different civilizations. Major Jin walked through the crowded exhibition hall, marveling at technologies she could barely comprehend. A floating display showed miniature stars being born and dying in controlled quantum fields. Another booth demonstrated plants that could grow in the vacuum of space. At the weapons section, aliens demonstrated energy blades that could slice through battleship armor and shields that could withstand direct hits from plasma cannons. Impressive, isn't it? Asked Ambassador Tay, appearing beside her. Some of these technologies took thousands of years to develop. Jin nodded, glancing toward the Earth section where her M1911 pistol sat in a glass case, part of the Historical Weapons of Earth display. Beside it lay other artifacts, a samurai sword, a longbow, a Roman gladius. In this company of stellar wonders, they looked like children's toys. We may be behind technologically, Jin said, but we're quick learners. Tay's 4 eyes blinked in their distinct pattern. That's why I championed Earth's inclusion. Your species adapts faster than any we've encountered. A commotion near the main entrance caught Jin's attention. Security robots, spherical machines, with multiple appendages, were scanning arriving guests with increased scrutiny. Security seems tight, Jin observed. A precaution, Tay replied. Not all species approve of Earth's inclusion in the Confederation. Some believe humans are too unpredictable. Jin was about to respond when the exhibition hall's lights flickered. Once, twice, then stabilized. Few noticed, but Jin's combat instincts triggered. Something was wrong. Near the refreshment area, she spotted them. 6 insectoid beings moving with too much purpose. Their chitinous exoskeletons a deep green, unlike Admiral Kyo's blue coloration. They carried what looked like maintenance equipment, but Jin recognized the deliberate movement patterns of soldiers on a mission. Before she could alert security, a high-pitched whine filled the air. Throughout the hall, energy weapons, communication devices, and even the security robots suddenly went dead. The beautiful holographic displays vanished. Only the basic lighting remained. An energy-dampening field, gasped Tay. But that's restricted. Technology! The 6 insectoids moved with sudden speed, dropping their disguises and revealing weapons, not energy-based but mechanical projectile launchers, similar to crossbows. They fired darts into the security personnel before anyone could react. Everyone down, one of the insectoids called through a translator. This is now under the control of the Pure Scale faction. Resistance will result in immediate execution. Jin pulled Tay down behind a display case as chaos erupted. Pure Scale faction, she whispered. Extremists, Tay hissed back, his silver blue, skin paling to an ashen grey. They believe interaction with newer species pollutes the Confederation. They particularly hate humans. They call you void monkeys. The terrorists efficiently gathered important guests, council members, ambassadors, and high-ranking officials into the center of the hall. Admiral Kyo was among them, her military bearing unchanged even as a crossbow was pointed at her head. We have disabled all energy-based technologies, announced the leader, his mandibles clicking between words. Your security forces cannot help. Your weapons are useless. Cooperation ensures temporary survival. Jin assessed the situation with military precision. The dampening field explained why the terrorists used mechanical weapons. They had prepared for their own technology's failure. Clever. The emergency locks will have sealed all exits, Tay whispered. Standard procedure. How long before help comes? Jin asked. The ship's secondary systems will take hours to bypass the dampening field. They've chosen their moment well. Most of the Confederation leadership is here. Jin's eyes drifted to the Earth exhibition where her pistol sat in its display case. A simple mechanical device, unaffected by energy-dampening fields, about 30 meters away across open floor. I need a distraction, she whispered to Tay. The ambassador's eyes widened as he followed her gaze. You can't be serious. There are 6 of them with ranged weapons. And they've forgotten about mine, Jin replied. I need you to create a distraction near the food dispensers, then make your way to the emergency access tunnel behind the Arcturus display. Tay hesitated only briefly before nodding. How will you reach your weapon without being seen? Jin glanced. Up at the decorative banners hanging from the ceiling, fabric representations of each member species' homeworld. I'm going to give those void monkeys a little surprise. While the terrorists were dividing hostages into groups, Tay knocked over a tray of food specimens. The loud clatter drew attention, and as 2 terrorists moved to investigate, Jin used the moment to slip behind a column. She climbed onto a display case, her years of combat training making her movements quick and silent. Grabbing one of the hanging banners, she used it to swing across a section of the hall, landing in a roll behind the Earth exhibit. She heard shouts but didn't look back. Her hands broke the display case, and she felt the familiar weight of the Guards 1811 in her palm. The magazine was still loaded. The exhibition organizers had insisted the weapon be disarmed, but Jin had argued successfully that the historical accuracy required the original ammunition, merely separated from the firing chamber. She slammed the magazine home and chambered around just as one of the terrorists rounded the corner. The insectoid froze, staring at the ancient weapon in confusion. His species had never seen a ballistic firearm in actual use, only in historical records. Primitive, Jin said with a grim smile, echoing their earlier mockery. But effective. The shot echoed through the exhibition hall like thunder, a sound not heard on a Confederation vessel in centuries. The terrorist dropped, green fluid leaking from his exoskeleton. Across the hall, the pure-scale leader jerked his head toward the sound. Impossible! All weapons are neutralized. Jin was already moving, using the exhibits as cover. The weapon that had been laughed at 3 months ago was now the only functioning firearm in a room full of the galaxy's most advanced technology. Sometimes, she thought as she prepared to free the hostages, the oldest tools are the best ones. The terrorist leader paced in front of the hostages, his segmented legs clicking against the polished floor of the exhibition hall. His exoskeleton gleamed under the emergency lights, mandibles twitching with what the human diplomats recognized as satisfaction. The 5 remaining members of the Pure Scale faction had herded the most important delegates into the central atrium, a spectacular Space normally filled with holographic star maps, now dark and ominous under the effects of the energy-dampening field. "Your Confederation has grown weak," the leader announced, his translator device one of the few pieces of technology still functioning. "Diluting our greatness with primitive species." He gestured toward the human delegates with a clawed appendage. "These creatures barely understand quantum mechanics, yet you would give them equal voice?" Admiral Keogh, still dignified despite being bound with mechanical restraints, lifted her head. "The pure-scale philosophy died out centuries ago, Zaz. Your faction is nothing but a historical embarrassment." The leader, Zaz, clicked his mandibles in anger and struck the Admiral across her face. "We are the future. After today, the Confederation will understand that expansion must end." In the corner of the room, a frightened diplomat whispered to his neighbor, "Where are the security forces? Why haven't they stormed in yet?" "The dampening field," another replied. "It's not just affecting our weapons, it's disrupting all energy-based systems on this deck. The security teams can't get past the emergency bulkheads without power." Zaz approached the human section of hostages. "Your species is particularly offensive, barely space-capable yet already given observer status." He picked up a tablet showing Earth's achievements, primitive by Confederation standards. "Your fastest ships would take decades to reach even the nearest Confederation outpost." President Hoon, representing Earth at the exhibition, spoke calmly, despite the crossbow pointed at his chest. "We may be behind technologically, but humanity has other strengths." "Like what?" Zaz mocked. "Your emotional unpredictability, your biological inefficiency." "Adaptability," Hoon replied simply. "Humans thrive in chaos." Meanwhile, Jin moved silently through the darkened exhibition hall, her military training allowing her to stick to shadows. The sound of her single gunshot had created momentary confusion among the terrorists, but they had quickly reorganized, leaving one guard dead and the others more alert. The element of surprise was gone. Jin crouched behind, an alien sculpture checking her pistol. 7 rounds remaining in the magazine, plus 1 in the chamber. 8 shots to take down 5 heavily armed terrorists who held dozens of hostages. The odds weren't good. A noise to her right made her freeze. One of the smaller service robots, apparently unaffected by the dampening field due to its mechanical nature, rolled into view. It was a simple cleaning unit, about the size of a dinner plate with basic sensors and rudimentary intelligence. Jin held her breath, but instead of alerting the terrorists, the robot simply bumped against her foot, then adjusted its course. An idea formed in her mind. "Hey, little guy," she whispered, gently catching the robot before it rolled away. Its basic optical sensor rotated toward her. "I need your help." On the other side of the exhibition hall, Zaz received a communication from one of his scouts. "The human with the primitive weapon has disappeared. We found Krez dead." "Impossible," Zaz hissed. "No primitive projectile weapon could penetrate our exoskeletons." The scout held up a damaged piece of chitin. The projectile shattered Krez's chest plate at close range. Zaz's compound eyes flickered with new colors, concern, perhaps even fear. "Find this human. Kill on sight." Ambassador Tay, seated among the hostages, spoke up. "You underestimate them, Zaz. This is why the pure-scale philosophy failed. You see only weakness where there is different strength." "Silence." Zaz aimed his weapon at Tay. "Your pro-human stance is well known, Ambassador. Perhaps we should make an example of you first." Before he could act, a small cleaning robot rolled into the center of the atrium, beeping innocuously. The terrorists ignored it, until it began projecting a recorded message. "Attention pure-scale terrorists," Jin's voice echoed from the robot's simple speaker. "Your dampening field has a fatal flaw. It only affects energy-based technology." Zaz fired his crossbow at the robot, destroying it instantly, but the distraction had served its purpose. From 3 different locations around the exhibition hall, more service robots rolled into view, each playing the same message on a loop. The terrorists fired frantically at the machines, their attention divided. Jin had reprogrammed the mechanical robots using their basic maintenance interfaces, simple machines with no advanced electronics, to be affected by the dampening field. As the terrorists focused on destroying the decoys, she moved closer to the hostage group. The human is using the maintenance units, Zaz realized too late. Spread out and find her. 2 terrorists moved away from the hostages, sweeping systematically. Through the darkened hall, Jin waited until they passed her position behind a large display case, then slipped out, moving toward the main group. She needed to get closer to free the hostages, but Zaz and 2 guards still watched them carefully. "Your primitive weapon may have killed one of us," Zaz called out, his voice echoing through the hall, "but you cannot defeat us all before we execute the hostages." Jin didn't respond, instead focusing on a new target, the dampening field generator. She had spotted it earlier, a cylindrical device near the terrorists' entry point. Mechanical in nature, with only minimal electronic components, it continued functioning while more advanced technology failed around it. Elegant in its simplicity, like her pistol. One of the searching terrorists rounded a corner and spotted Jin. She fired twice, the thunder of gunshots echoing through the hall. The terrorist fell, green fluid pooling beneath his twitching form. "She's..." "By the Arcturus display," the dying terrorist managed to call out before collapsing. Jin ran, knowing her position was compromised. She needed a new approach. As she ducked behind a refreshment counter, she noticed something. The lights in the far section of the hall were flickering, growing stronger. The dampening field was weakening in that area. Of course, she realized, the field couldn't cover the entire exhibition hall indefinitely. Its mechanical nature limited its power and range. If she could just hold out a little longer, the Confederation security forces would eventually break through. But the hostages didn't have that kind of time. Zaz was growing desperate, pressing his weapon against Ambassador Tay's head. "Surrender. Now human or the ambassador dies first," he shouted. Jin closed her eyes briefly, feeling the weight of the ancient pistol in her hands. The weapon that had been ridiculed by these advanced aliens now represented the only hope for dozens of lives. What her great-grandfather had carried through war on Earth would now be used to save beings from across the galaxy. "Sometimes," she whispered to herself, echoing her words from 3 months ago, "the old ways have value the new cannot appreciate." She checked her ammunition once more. 6 bullets remaining. 6 bullets against 3 terrorists and an unknown amount of time before help arrived. Jin took a deep breath and formulated her plan. The technology that had once been laughed at was about to prove its worth in ways no one could have imagined. Jin moved through the darkened maintenance corridors of the stellar harmony like a shadow. During the 3 months of diplomatic exchanges, she had studied the flagship's schematics, standard procedure for Earth security personnel. What had seemed like routine preparation now meant the difference between life and death. The narrow service tunnel she navigated connected exhibition sections without passing through the main atrium. The metal walls around her vibrated slightly, with the ship's massive engines, a constant reminder that they were suspended in space, thousands of kilometers above Earth. "Think, Jin," she whispered to herself, checking her pistol again. 6 rounds remained. The knowledge weighed on her. Each shot needed to count. She reached a junction where the maintenance tunnel opened into a small control room. Inside, 2 Confederation engineers, one reptilian, one with features like a humanoid otter, were attempting to bypass the ship's compromised systems. "Don't shoot," the otter-like engineer said, raising webbed hands when Jin appeared with her weapon raised. "I'm Major Jin, Earth Security," she explained quickly. "What's the status of the dampening field?" The reptilian engineer blinked vertical eyelids. "It's decaying at the edges, but still strong in the central sections. We can't communicate with security teams or activate defensive systems." "The terrorists?" Jin asked. "Still holding 34 hostages in the central atrium," the otter-like engineer replied. "Security forces are trapped behind sealed bulkheads on decks 2 and 4. Jin examined a mechanical schematic displayed on a hand-cranked emergency terminal, one of the few devices still operating. "They're expecting an assault from the main entrances," she said, tracing a path with her finger. "But there's a display ventilation system here that runs directly above the secondary exhibition space." The reptilian engineer clicked his tongue. "Those vents are barely 40 centimeters wide." Jin smiled grimly. "I'll fit." Using tools from the maintenance room, the engineers helped Jin pry open an access panel. The ventilation shaft was tight, designed to circulate air through the delicate artifacts, not to transport people. Jin squeezed into the narrow metal tunnel, the cold surface pressing against her shoulders. When the dampening field fails, tell security that there's a human officer inside with a projectile weapon, she instructed the engineers. I don't want to get shot by my own side. The otter-like engineer nodded. Be careful. These pure-scale extremists, they don't value any life but their own kind. Jin began the claustrophobic journey through the ventilation system, pushing herself forward with elbows and knees. The metal creaked occasionally, and she froze each time, listening for any indication that the terrorists had heard. After 15 agonizing minutes, she reached a grate overlooking a small exhibition room adjacent to the atrium. Through gaps between displays, she could see 2 terrorists guarding a group of 10 hostages, mostly technical staff and minor diplomats. The main prize, the ambassadors and high-ranking officials, remained in the central atrium with Zaz Jin studied the scene below. The terrorists had positioned themselves at opposite ends of the room, crossbows ready. The hostages sat in the center, some injured, all terrified. Jin needed to take out both guards simultaneously, or at least quickly enough to prevent an alarm. She removed the ventilation grate carefully, setting it aside without a sound. The first terrorist stood directly below her position, an easy target. The second was 12 meters away, partially hidden behind a display of Confederation medical achievements. Jin took a deep breath, steadying herself. She'd need to drop down, take out the first guard instantly, then pivot for a clean shot at the second before he could react. No room for error. She slipped through the opening feet first, her weight supported by her arms until the last moment. Then she let go, dropping silently behind the first terrorist. Before her feet fully touched the floor, her hand covered the insectoid's mouthparts, while the other drove her combat knife into the gap between head and thorax, a vulnerability she had noted during the diplomatic meetings with Admiral Kyo's security team. The terrorist collapsed without a sound, but the motion caught the attention of the second guard. He raised his crossbow, but Jin was already moving, rolling behind. A display case as a dart shattered the glass beside her. The hostages ducked lower, some covering their heads. Jin came up from her roll with her pistol raised and fired once. The sound cracked through the exhibition space like thunder, causing several hostages to scream in surprise. The bullet struck the terrorist's weapon, sending it flying from his grasp. Before he could recover, Jin fired again, her aim perfect. The terrorist dropped, green fluid pooling beneath him. Everyone stay calm, Jin said to the hostages, moving quickly to check that both terrorists were truly neutralized. I'm Major Jin, Earth Security. We need to move quickly and quietly. A Confederation diplomat rose shakily to his feet. The dampening field. Our communications are still down. Not for long, Jin replied, retrieving the crossbows from the fallen terrorists. The field is degrading. In the meantime, we improvise. She distributed the crossbows to 2 Confederation security personnel among the hostages. A quick search of the terrorists yielded communication devices, simple mechanical radios designed to function despite the dampening field. 3 guards. Down 5 hostages secured, Jin reported into the captured radio, perfectly mimicking the clicking speech pattern of the pure-scale faction, a skill she had developed during the 3 months of diplomatic training. Understood, came Zaz's reply. Maintain position. Jin turned to the freed hostages. Is there another way to the central atrium besides the main doors? A blue-skinned technician nodded. Service corridor through the refreshment preparation area. It's narrow, but it connects. Good. You 10 head back the way I came. There are engineers in the maintenance junction who will help you reach safety. I'm going after the others. One of the security officers, a tall being with crystalline features, stepped forward. I'm coming with you. I know how to use this. He hefted the crossbow. Jin nodded, checking her pistol again. 4 bullets remained. The odds were improving, but still dangerous. They moved through the service corridor, Jin leading with her pistol ready. The sounds of the ship seemed amplified in the confined space, the hum of emergency systems, distant voices, the occasional metallic groan as the massive vessel adjusted its orbit. At the corridor's end, they peered through a small window into the atrium. Zaz paced nervously while his 2 remaining guards kept their weapons trained on the hostages. Ambassador Tay's face showed signs of beating, but his four eyes remained defiant. Admiral Kyo sat perfectly still, her military bearing unbroken despite the situation. "Something's wrong," Zaz was saying into his radio. "Sector 4 team is not responding." Jin glanced at her crystalline companion. "When we go in, I'll take Zaz. You focus on the guard nearest the hostages." The officer nodded, readying his crossbow. "On 3, Jin whispered. 1, 2. Before she could say 3, the lights in the atrium suddenly brightened. Emergency. Sirens began to wail. The dampening field had finally collapsed. Zaz roared in rage, raising his weapon toward Ambassador Tay. "If we die, so do they!" Jin burst through the door, her ancient pistol raised. "Drop your weapons!" she shouted. As Zaz turned toward her, recognition flashed in his compound eyes. The human with the primitive weapon that had already killed 3 of his soldiers. For the first time in his life, the insectoid terrorist felt something he had never expected to feel toward a lesser species: fear. Time seemed to slow as Jin faced Zaz across the exhibition hall. The terrorist leader's compound eyes glittered with hatred and something else: disbelief that a human with an ancient weapon had decimated his carefully planned operation. "Primitive ape," Zaz hissed, mandibles clicking rapidly. "You think your metal projectiles can stop the inevitable? The Confederation must remain pure." Jin kept her pistol steady, aimed at the center of Zaz's thorax. "Last chance, release the hostages." Instead of surrendering, Zaz reached for a device on his belt and activated it. A shimmering field of energy enveloped him, an emergency personal shield, compact enough to function despite the weakening, dampening field. "Your weapon is useless now," he sneered, raising his crossbow toward Jin. "Our scientists developed these personal shields to stop energy weapons thousands of times more powerful than your primitive gun." Jin didn't waver. "That's the problem with advanced technology, Zaz. It's designed to stop advanced threats." She squeezed the trigger. The pistol's report echoed through the atrium like a thunderclap. The bullet struck the energy shield, which flared brilliant blue, but instead of stopping the projectile, the shield shattered like glass. The simple lead bullet, moving at speeds the shield wasn't calibrated to resist, passed through and buried itself in Zaz's exoskeleton. The terrorist leader staggered backward, green fluid seeping from the wound. His compound eyes widened in shock. As he looked down at the damage, "Impossible," he gasped. "Not impossible," Jin replied. "Just forgotten technology." The remaining terrorist guards, seeing their leader wounded and their shields useless against this ancient weapon, threw down their crossbows. The crystalline security officer Jin had freed quickly moved to secure them. Across the atrium, emergency bulkheads slid open as the ship's systems came back online. Confederation security forces stormed in, weapons ready, but found the situation already under control. Admiral Kyo rose from among the hostages, brushing dust from her ceremonial uniform. She approached Jin with an appraising look. "It seems we have underestimated both you and your antique," she said, gesturing toward the pistol still in Jin's hand. Jin safeguarded her weapon as medical teams rushed in to attend to the injured. "Hostages. Sometimes the oldest solutions are the most effective, Admiral, especially when everyone has forgotten them." 2 days later, aboard the repaired Stellar Harmony, the Confederation Council convened an emergency session. The Grand Chamber, with its semicircular arrangement of delegate stations, hummed with conversation as representatives from 27 worlds discussed the crisis and its implications. Jin stood at attention beside President Hoon as Ambassador Tay addressed the assembly. The ambassador's face still showed bruising from his ordeal, but his voice was strong. "The pure-scale faction believed that newer species weakened our confederation," Tay said. "They were wrong. Major Jin has demonstrated that diversity of approach is our greatest strength. While our advanced energy weapons were rendered useless, her mechanical weapon, technology we had dismissed as primitive, saved us all." A murmur of agreement passed through the assembly. Admiral Kyo rose to speak next, her military posture impeccable. "As head of Confederation security, I am recommending an immediate review of our defense protocols," she announced. "We have become overly reliant on a single technological path. The pure-scale terrorists exploited this vulnerability, but a human with a 2-century-old weapon exposed theirs. Jin felt uncomfortable as dozens of alien eyes turned toward her. She was a soldier, not a diplomat and certainly not a symbol. Yet somehow she had become one. President Hoon stepped forward. Earth is honored by the Confederation's recognition. We may be newcomers to your galactic community, but we bring with us thousands of years of adaptation and innovation. Sometimes, as Major Jin has shown, the simple solution is the most elegant. After the assembly, Jin found herself in a quieter section of the ship, the Confederation Museum of Cultural Exchange. A curator, a jellyfish-like being floating in a personal gravity field, approached her. Major Jin, the curator's translation device conveyed, "The Council has requested that your weapon be displayed here as a symbol of the lesson learned during the terrorist incident." Jin hesitated, her hand moving instinctively to the holster where the M1911 rested. "It's been in my family for generations." "We understand its significance," the curator replied. "The display would note its history and importance, and of course you would retain ownership. We merely wish to share its story with future generations of Confederation citizens." Jin considered this. The pistol had been passed down through her family as a reminder of human conflicts, wars fought on Earth's soil over ideology and resources. Now it would represent something else, humanity's unique contribution to a galactic civilization. "I'll consider it," she said finally. As she turned to leave, she found Ambassador Tay waiting nearby. "You've changed how the Confederation sees Earth," he said. "Before, many saw humans as technological infants barely worth noticing. Now they see you as unpredictable, adaptable." "Is that good?" Jin asked. Tay's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. A gesture Jin had learned indicated amusement. It is healthy to be reminded that advancement doesn't always mean improvement. Some old ways persist because they work. 6 months later, cadets at the Confederation Defense Academy gathered around a new display in their tactical training center. Inside a transparent case rested Major Jin's M1911 pistol, now officially designated the Jin artifact. Beside it, a holographic simulation showed how a simple lead projectile had penetrated an energy shield designed to stop weapons thousands of years more advanced. The instructor, a veteran of numerous planetary conflicts, gestured toward the display. "The Jin incident, as we now call it, fundamentally changed Confederation security doctrine. For centuries, we pursued a single technological path, believing that energy-based weapons represented the pinnacle of development." A cadet raised a tentacle. "But surely they are superior in almost every way." "Superior against enemies using similar technology," the instructor corrected. "But what the humans reminded us is that technology doesn't always advance in a straight line. Sometimes it branches, and sometimes the old branches retain value we've forgotten." Throughout the Confederation, similar lessons were being taught. Security forces began incorporating mechanical backup systems. Engineers designed shields that could stop objects of any velocity, not just energy weapons. And diplomats approached Earth with new respect, seeking to learn what other forgotten knowledge humans might possess. As for Jin, she eventually allowed her pistol to be displayed, but only after firing it one last time at the Academy's range. The sound of that ancient weapon echoed through the facility, a reminder that sometimes the oldest solution is still the best one. The end.